like a parliament at village level. And Gram Panchayat is like cabinet, which will follow up and execute the decisions taken. Just rough analogy I'm giving you. This is the true spirit of democracy. When you have local governments that are efficient, you will really see a transformation at the grassroots level. This is the fundamental assumption with which we have had the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts. This was the vision. But is it translating into reality? No. Why? Same funda. If you want to ensure governance is happening, you need to give them 3F approach: funds, functions, and functionaries. Okay? This is with respect to the Gram Panchayat level. But what about the quality of people who are residing in that area? Do they really have enough awareness and wisdom to take the decision that is good enough for them? Because ultimately they are the persons who are going to decide what is relevant for that area. Correct? So there is this question in prelims. The quality of democracy depends directly on the wisdom of people. Somewhere in 2017 you had this question in prelims. So how do you enhance the wisdom of these people? How do you teach people, or at least how do you encourage people to know what is the wise thing to do given our resource constraints, given our limitations? This is the problem statement. Clear? What is the problem statement? We have to improve the quality of decision making at the grassroots level. Let's say at this point of time we have a generation that is already having its own set of prejudices, biases, and maybe a sense of hopelessness that nothing will change. But why should the same vision be passed on to the next generation? Why do you want the next generation to carry forward the same sense of hopelessness? The cycle should break at some point, right? How do you break it? Where do you think you will have the best opportunity to do that? Early days. Schooling. You may not give them funds, functions, and functionaries because it has got a lot to do with delegating power, both financial and administrative. But at least in terms of the quality of ideas at the grassroots level, so that the children of today, when they become voters tomorrow, they come up with better ideas on how to improve their quality of life at the grassroots level. Yes or no? This is the fundamental idea behind the model Gram Sabhas that the Ministry of Panchayat Raj recently launched. Okay? Clear? Now, do you have a precedent for something like this before? Yes. How many of you, if you are from CBSE schools or ICSE schools, you must have heard this Model United Nations, MUN, right? What happens in MUN? See, the objective here is, let's say, just like in United Nations. What is United Nations? It's a global level body which sole purpose is to ensure peace and stability in the world. So, let's say students are asked to represent their countries and create a sort of a mock MUN, Model United Nation, so that students get an opportunity to participate on international issues, and this is supposed to create a culture of global citizenship. Okay, so what is the fundamental idea here? Just because you say we want students to become global citizens, it is automatically going to translate? No, right? The fundamental principle on which this is based is experiential learning. What is this method of teaching? Any teaching method is called pedagogy, pedagogical method. Experiential learning is that pedagogical method where students get to experience the pain points of any issue. I mean, some of you might have already gone through that in the morning, who wrote the test. Anyway, coming back. Experiential learning makes more sense when you understand the pain points. This is the idea behind using this as a method to make them participants, children as participants in that process. When you get your hands dirty, let's say you want to understand the pain of, let's say, a potter, like who is designing these pots and making these pots. A person who is more likely to, who's a person who has already experienced this difficulty of making a pot, that person, when he grows up to become a policy maker, he's more likely to empathize with the problems of a potter. I am suggesting something similar too. Imagine a kid who participates in a model Gram Sabha, comes up with a discussion on the budgets, planning, execution, the pain points, the technological drawbacks. Do you think that kid, when he becomes an IAS officer, goes back to his mandal or a village, do you think he'll have a better understanding of the grassroots problems? Very likely. So, as a child, when you experience the civic problems, you are more likely to respond with empathy. The reason why I am not explaining this away just like another initiative of the government and not brushing it off is because it's a very powerful idea. If this idea is planted in your mind, you can use it in multiple places, whether it is in GS2, essay, etc., etc. My job as a teacher or a mentor is just to open up the dimensions on where you can use this idea of participation as a method for learning. You can think of it as a cue and deploy that thought process in multiple places. I'm a person who believes in the collective capacity of people, and I think together, if we are open to learn from each other and also open to learn from experience, the learning curve will be very steep. You will get to learn a lot when compared to you figuring out your own set of mistakes. So, what if you have a competition between two Gram Sabhas on who goes on to become the best model Gram Sabha? That sense of healthy competition is actually going to inculcate a culture of better governance demand in the future generations. In many Scandinavian countries, let's say for example, all the North Europe countries where the population rates are fairly low and the economic progress is pretty high. The taxations are also very high, almost 40%. And yet the citizens don't complain. Do you know why? They're happy with the kind of social services they get from the government. Your education, your healthcare, your roads, all the basic facilities, including housing sometimes for the not so privileged, everything is taken care. And that's why they don't have a problem paying 40% tax. Why do you see Indians complaining? Because of poor public service delivery. No matter which level we are talking about, the same problem persists. And this cannot be solved by dumping in more money, because more money will be swindled away. If there is a structural problem, it cannot be solved with an economic incentive. It can be solved by addressing the structural problem. If you have a leaky pipe, do you think pumping in more water will solve the problem? No, right? You have to fix the pipe. Similarly, when there is a governance deficit, right from the vision that you are trying to lay down till the execution, at every stage when there is a problem, vision is a problem, structure is a problem, execution is a problem, obviously the outcome will be a problem. So this model Gram Sabha is talking about a futuristic standpoint, like from a futuristic standpoint where we are trying to create citizens who have a better civic sense. This premise is going to be important now for the subsequent articles. I'm trying to interrelate articles from different newspapers. At the heart of all this is the same idea. The quality of democracy depends on the wisdom of people. Now, let's see if I can directly go to the topic. See, this is also about local government, but in urban centers. Okay, great. Now, welfare dependency or governance reform. Let's talk about this article. Okay? Take a look at this. What is the context of this article? Bihar elections are around the corner. In the past few months, we have seen the special intensive revision of the electoral rolls, the ensuing controversy of how words were deleted. What did Supreme Court say? Is this fair enough? What do you have to understand about the electoral laws behind this special intensive revision? Is it constitutional? Is it not? We have had all these debates. But the point that I'm trying to discuss now has got more to do with governance philosophy and governance approach, which is contingent on both economic methods that most state governments or most political parties competing for power are using, federalism angle, and by linking both social and economic factors to governance, we are trying to understand what we should be doing to make situations better. This is the overall idea behind this topic. But before that, let me establish some facts. So, when we were discussing about the special intensive revision of the electoral rolls, what is the idea behind it? The idea behind it is, let's say, in the previous electoral roll revisions, if some illegal immigrants crept in and if there is a possibility of fake votes, electoral rolls should be revised from time to time. This is the premise. But what happened in the process is that instead of notifying every single individual who is removed from the electoral roll, what happened was this process assumed that everybody is vigilant enough to know that their electoral participation is at stake and their name is removed from the roll. They did not get notified. And secondly, they were not given an opportunity to at least appeal. The set of documents that ECI asked, it is very difficult for the population to get that kind of documents. Why? Let me establish the economic reality of that state. If you take a look at the number of multidimensionally poor people, if you see the multidimensionally poverty index, 52%, it's the highest. So the per capita income of this country, what is per capita income? It's the total income of the country divided by population. So if you see the per capita income, it is roughly around 1.13 to 1.2 lakh. You know what is Bihar's? 50% of this, roughly, somewhere around 52,000. People are living on a income of 5 to 6,000 rupees per month. A family. That is the level of poverty in Bihar. What was I saying? The quality of democracy depends on the wisdom of the people. So, do you think a person who is starving, a person who is in abject poverty, will have the patience to go to a government office and submit their documents? If not patience, do you think they have awareness? Very difficult. But this is not the problem. Let's say even if they are, the practical difficulty is most of the people in Bihar migrate out of the state for employment. So the fundamental assumption of this democracy is that population is static, whereas it is not. People move from one place to another because our own constitution says so. We have the right to freedom of movement from one place to another. And in search of employment, if we are going away from our hometown, there is no way that will be a ground for removing our eligibility from electoral process. Right. So it is in this context, the entire set of issues that followed in the electoral participation and the entire process of elections, there was back and forth communication between all the stakeholders. Let's say all that is sorted out. Process itself is a problem. Now, what is the election promise? You have multiple parties. Let's not get into the name of the political parties because it is of no interest for UPSC. Broadly speaking, do you see any party speaking about structural reform, using any heavy words like this in Bihar? Why? Let's talk about economy, industrialization of Bihar. Do you really think that party will win? Why not? Like I said, a population living in such abject poverty will not have a vision because they want to escape the present misery. How do you put people out of that misery? By giving them more freebies. Let's take a look at the tax allocations to the state. Most of the money is going where? Welfare. What is this idea of welfare? What is welfare? Okay, now this brings us to an interesting point. What is the idea of development? Development is, according to Amartya Sen, it's the capability or agency to get better and explore your potential. So let's say if there is a freebie or some incentive given by the government to a girl child, let's say for example, they're getting free bicycles. Is it solving some problem for them? Yes. What is the problem? So you need state to empower local population. What is the problem in this case? Because of the long distance, especially for high school girls who do not have the transportation, especially during their time of the month where it becomes extremely difficult for them to travel. There is a social stigma on one hand. On the other hand, there is a severe prejudice. One intervention can solve multiple problems, then that idea is warranted. But how do you justify freebie direct benefit transfer for every account, even when they are not eligible? When I say they are not eligible, they don't have to get that money. It is not going to make any difference in their lives. How are you exactly empowering them? And this is the problem of a freebie model of governance. How do you move away from this? Somewhere the cycle has to break down, right? You have to start talking about industrialization of Bihar. Industrialization, modernization, and at the same time, we also have a challenge of moving towards net zero targets at a global level. Isn't it a ripe opportunity for Bihar to think of leveraging this transition. How about you become the center for all the green skills that can cater to the nation for future needs? How about you give them opportunities to work? Why is it that none of the political parties think about this idea? There is also one theory which says that because the southern states are now in an economically well-off position, there is an incentive for the local politicians to keep Bihar poor. Not just Bihar, all the eastern states. Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa, Chhattisgarh. Why? Because they have labor surplus, which creates cheap labor for all the southern states as well as the rest of the country. And this is one argument raised by some politicians justifying and actually blaming the southern states for complaining that most of our tax savings are actually spent in the northern part of the country. If tax money that is raised from south states is spent there, how does it logically add up to the fact that people are moving out of that state? If money is spent there and life is getting better, isn't it contradictory? Why will people want to move out of their home state? Does it make any sense? If you have a local opportunity, do you really want to travel thousands of kilometers away from home, live in such shabby conditions in cities? No, right? Something is not adding up. What is not adding up? The idea of justice, the idea of welfare, and the idea of empowerment. These are not adding up. What is actually promised as empowerment is in fact just a small economic incentive to stop the voters from questioning. And that should not be the way out of this conundrum. That is the article's central point here. So, the next political party that is going to come to power, or the coalition government that is going to come to power, should parallelly carry out two different strands. One of the welfare and the other one of industrialization and economic empowerment. How do I make my state much more prosperous is a problem statement that any political party coming to power should deal with. Clear? That is the second article. Now that you realized how governance and the ensuing mistrust between the government and the people can corrode the democratic values, the same thing can manifest in left-wing extremism, which is what brings us to this article. Okay? Red corridor to get green shoots. What is the essence of this article? What is the context of this article? Let me explain. Left-wing extremism. What do you mean by this? It's a movement by a group of people who do not have any belief on the intent as well as the capacity of a democratic state to deliver justice to the people. So, what is the alternate they suggest? A communist form of government. What is the tool they are using? Extremism, violence. So, there are a lot of controversies around this topic, and the larger idea is that if you keep people poor for a long period of time, they will revolt. So, development and economic progress in those areas is good enough to settle this issue. But if you take a look at the data, somehow it's not adding up again. Why? Because it is not just about money. Take a look at any, let's digress from the topic a bit. You might be bored, so I'll just try to bring the same idea from a different perspective. How many of you watched this movie Pushpa? You know this conversation between Pushpa and his friend Keshav, right? Wherein he says that, why are you asking for a partnership, not salary? When you ask for a partnership, you will be treated like an equal. When you ask for salary, you will be treated like a subordinate. When you know your worth and what value you are bringing to the table, the negotiation changes. So just because money is being offered doesn't mean every issue will be settled. In a democracy, where does the power reside? With the people. When people themselves are not treated with dignity, they feel alienated from this process. No matter how much money you give them, they'll come back with vengeance. So it's important to treat people with dignity. That's when peace prevails. The fundamental assumption that money will solve every problem is completely trashed, especially in the context of left-wing extremism. So the writers actually quote some data. If you see the number of civilians killed in the attacks conducted by them, you will see that number keeps on reducing. On one hand, the state claims that it is because of their Samadhan strategy, but the writers say that if you take a look at the pattern of the targets of this left-wing extremist attacks, you will notice that they are mainly against public infrastructure. So it's not just about expressing their dissent through extremism. It's a statement. It's a symbolic statement that they're resisting the state, which according to them is not giving them the dignity they deserve. And therefore they're getting alienated. Rightly put, Samadhan strategy is actually trying to address this problem and bring back that element of mistrust which crept in the red corridor. So it's not just about money. It's not just about development. It's about how you treat people day in and day out and make them participants in this process. And this is exactly what this article is talking about. See, if poverty is the only issue, why don't you see the same level of left-wing extremism in Odisha? It's not just poverty, it is corruption plus misgovernance, and more than anything, from a sociological standpoint, a sense of alienation that makes you feel like you don't belong to this setup. So you are seeking an alternative arrangement wherein you get back that dignity. So left-wing extremism is more prevalent on this concept of alienation more than of course, they are also important, but mostly you have to address this sense of alienation. Give them a sense of belonging. This is where Gram Sabha and the model Gram Sabhas as a concept for the future generations will become very important. Okay? Now, let's shift the focus away from the rural politics. See, predominantly all the topics that we discuss now are more inclined towards the rural politics and the quality of democracy at the grassroots level. Paradoxically, if you see the kind of involvement people in villages have towards politics vis-a-vis the kind of involvement people have in urban centers, you will see a stark contrast. In the local regions, you will see some very animated and passionate discussion on politics. Like people are really involved. Right from a sarpanch till the MLA, like everybody in the local population, they're very much involved in this process. So much so that they'll end up killing each other. They're divided on the political party lines, which again is on the basis of caste, region, etc., etc., which are the basic primordial identities that Indian society created for its functioning way back. That is continuing till now. Look at the stark contrast of this aspect in urban centers. Forget about politics, they don't care about your neighbor. How many of you know your local MLA? How many of you know your ward member? Do you know which ward you are in? Not many people do. This is the contrast between India and Bharat. I would say the real strength of this country is not in India, it's in Bharat. That's the narrative and the terms used in the present context. Bharat signifies the strength and potential which is lying untapped in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, towns, villages, rural centers. And India signifies the efficiency of the market and the capacity to serve to the global needs. In both these fronts, we are underperforming. And it has got a lot to do with the quality of democracy at both the levels, whether it is the urban centers or the local centers. We've discussed the local centers in the rural setup. Let's take a look at the centers in the urban areas. What is the problem in cities? Yes? What's the problem in the cities? Same problem. Form is different, problem is same. No funds, no power, no skill. Funds, functions, functionaries. Same old problems, but what is the difference? Even if people want to care, the local, urban architecture, governance architecture is such that the power is through indirect elections. Do you have a direct election for mayor of a city? No. How will you hold the local government accountable? The executive body is again a bureaucrat, not a politician. So if you want to question a bureaucrat who has job security, permanent, somehow it doesn't work like that. It's highly bureaucratic. Let's say you want to complain. You have to walk through so many departments and all of them are unresponsive. There is a big hole, pothole on the main road. Do you know how to get it fixed? At least, let's say if you want food, you'll either go to Swiggy or Zomato. Do you think urban citizens know where to go? Even I will have to do my own research. After telling this also, it doesn't strike my mind. I know on the back of my mind I can go to CP Grams. But that is created at the central level. But what about the local level? We don't know. There are no established mechanisms for seeking accountability from urban governments, despite the fact that most of the money is generated. What is Telangana without Hyderabad? And look at the state of affairs. In the most expensive real estate hubs also, we are neither able to solve the drainage problem, nor traffic problem, nor air quality problem. What kind of quality life are we really talking about? Has got a lot to do with the structure, not the wisdom. Because people here are, at least if you give them avenues, there is a possibility of asking questions. So the structure is different. You don't have an direct election. You can't seek political accountability at a local level. You're dependent on bureaucrats. And bureaucratic efficiency is pretty slow. You elect one guy, but decision is taken by a bureaucrat who is permanent. You go to this guy and say, boss, I voted to you because I had this problem. Why are you not solving? He will point fingers to the bureaucrat. Who will point fingers to the state government? State government will point fingers to the center. And the whole cycle repeats. So if I have a drainage problem in front of my house, should I be contacting the Prime Minister's office? Something about this design isn't working and we need to fix that. It's common sense, but it is not happening. So, one, it is not working because it is all about power control. If it is not working, at least in some centers where if the quality of life is bad, people will move out. A few weeks ago, we discussed the concept in the context of London, where many billionaires are exiting London because the quality of life is getting worse. They believe that with the amount of money they are paying up and the return they are getting in the terms of quality of life, whether in terms of housing or air quality or whatsoever amenities that you discuss, they're just not getting it. Why should they pay? So they're exiting. In a growing country like India, having urban governance and convincing, at least in a few clusters, that the quality of life is going to be great, not addressing governance issues will be a catastrophic disaster. Otherwise, let's say, take the case of New York. New York as a municipality or as a urban center generates so much revenue that people will demand accountability. Why aren't we having the same level of accountability at local level in Hyderabad? Let's say a company, a multinational company invested their funds here. Why should they take the route of a chief minister's office or a help of an MLA to fix the local issues? They are MNCs, they have the reach, they'll do it. What about common citizens? We are also a part of that, right? So let's say if you are a highly skilled professional who is residing in, let's say, I'll take Hyderabad out of the picture and put them in Bangalore. When you have to spend half of your day to move across the street in your car, do you think that skilled professional will want to stay back in that place? Eventually, no amount of marketing saying that Bangalore life is great or the quality of weather is great, it's not going to work out. Because it might work on social media, but it won't work out in reality. They will exit eventually. They will move out to, let's say, a Hyderabad or Gurgaon or Pune or any other center. And the same cycle, if it repeats in these cities also, which is very likely if you don't address the underlying structural problem. There is no power, no accountability, it's not going to work. As a solution to this problem, this article suggests that we create some special governance zones. And the inspiration behind this is taken from economics. The governance inspiration lied in economics. What is that inspiration? Special economic zones, where you have a small cluster of a land which is completely immune from the bureaucratic headaches. You have no tax headaches, you have no red tapeism. there is a single window clearance. If you want to open up a factory in that special economic zone, all you have to do is submit one document online. It gets approved, everything will be streamlined, and you can start the business in a short period of time. If you want cities to be centers of growth, we have to replicate the same idea and remove this bureaucratic headaches, and make two local governments compete. If that is not possible for the entire city, we have Electronic City as an example in Bangalore, which is different from the Bangalore municipality and the municipal corporation. And it proved to be much more efficient in managing its waste. Similarly, you also have the Gift City. Gift City in Gujarat, which is a financial hub, fintech hub. All the rich folks, they'll come there, reside there, their offices are there, and the quality of life is supposed to be good because they will be feeding the rest of the economy. So, governance deficit should not become a reason for people to exit this place where they're bringing in money for others also. And it is on this premise, this article writer, because we are not able to create a alternative structure which is logical. Alternatively, at least let's go for this special governance zones, so that at least in these areas the decision making is quick and the quality of life is good. But I have a fundamental problem with this on an idea level. If this is executed, will this be a part of the smart cities mission? If yes, smart cities are envisioned as high growth clusters. Entire city is supposed to be inclusive. You are essentially saying that it is okay to create small clusters which are like islands of prosperity when you have a sea of misery. Right? How do you fix this? This is practical, but not ideal. Somewhere in the middle, you have to start with this, which is also, I think, what the article writer eventually suggests. You have to scale this up for the entire city and the entire country and make competitive federalism a norm, not just between states, but also between cities. If that is not possible, at least let's make Electronic City of Bangalore and Gachibowli region of Hyderabad compete with each other in terms of better quality of governance. At least that will serve as a role model for the next expansion of this idea. And this is the central point of this article. One last article which can be useful for your sociology optional as well as your entertainment value. Let me take you to that article. I am not creating this up, so I'm just reading it out. There is a term called enshittification, okay, which is brought forth by a Canadian who suggests that over a period of time, the quality of social media platforms or in general internet platforms come down. And that is intentional according to this author. What is this? I don't know how many of you used Facebook in its initial days. I'm just giving you an example. When Facebook first began, the kind of virality that you can get, let's say you post something, the ease with which you can reach millions compared to 2011 to now is drastically different. In the initial days, whether it is an Instagram feed or a Facebook feed, you are more likely to see content from your friends or family or whoever is in your followers list. Over a period of time, the algorithms have tuned to whatever becomes popular. So you see less of your family and friends and more of someone who doesn't make any sense. Like you expect an open Instagram, randomly some girl is dancing and you don't know why. Right now it is so common because you got used to it. But the first time when something like that happens, you start wondering what is happening. Why is this person on my feed? That's how the platforms evolve. First, they add value, and over a period of time, the quality deteriorates, and you're forced to pay up more. I'll give you an example. How many of you are on Amazon Prime? In the initial days, the cost was $3.99. It's free, first of all, then $3.99. Now then you pay 1,000 or 1,500. You enter into the platform with the hope that you will have a very hassle-free experience. You start a movie, first minute ad plays. If you want this ad-free experience, pay more. How is this essentially different from a cable TV we had at 2 decades ago? The reason why I came to an OTT platform is because I don't want ads. Now you are playing ads every 3 minutes and you're asking me to pay more. Okay. So the the answer for this question is actually given by a kid. I asked him, how is this exactly different from the cable TV I've had in my childhood? It's like, I want to watch Bahubali right now. Can you watch it on Gemini? It's like, okay, fair enough. But you've got so many options that you don't know what to watch. Back then, if it is a festival day and if the movie starts at 7 p.m., you fix your schedule according to that. If everything is on demand, everything becomes valueless. Now that you know that movie is going to stay on that platform for a very long time, I will watch it as per my wish. So there are two kinds of people who feel that, it takes the fun out of. Like there are people who preferred OTT platforms for the reason that they hate ad breaks. They don't want to watch it on TV because it interrupts the flow. Just an example of how the quality deteriorates over a period of time. Clear? Now, is this phenomenon specific only to social media or OTT platforms? No, it's the case everywhere. Take the case of e-commerce, Amazon. First, you can list your product for free. Then, paid services, ads. Now, unless and until you have a huge fee and almost give the product away free of cost, almost literally, you won't stand a chance. And if it is working well, even after then, they will create a product at half the price and rank it above you. They'll name it Solimo. Isn't this predatory practice? And this whole pattern reflects the moral degeneration of the digital capitalist world. So this can be a ethics question also. Clear? How do you explain this? A complete disregard for user experience and normalizing the removal of dignity from this user experience. What kind of digital governance structure should we put in place so that we are informed of these changes and consent is taken, and they should of course make money. We are not against them making money, but at least inform. Let the user take the decision what is good for them, not the algorithm. And that's the context of this article. I hope all of these articles will be used. That's it for the day. Meet you tomorrow. Bye.